Yo, what is up, guys? Your boy Mix. Welcome to the channel. New, welcome back from not. And today we're gonna talk about Miss Marvel episode 1 and all my thoughts on it and all that good stuff. But before we get into it, make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe, enjoy the content, and yeah, let's get into it. So, Miss Marvel episode 1. What did I think? I liked it, honestly. I really enjoyed it. Let's talk about Kamala Khan, right? So, okay. I think it I gotta start here, right? How was Kamala Khan as a character? I think they got her 1-to-1. Besides her powers, they basically took her out the comic book 1-to-1. Iman, I think her name is Iman. Something with what's her last name? Hold on, might as well. Iman Vellani, there you go. Iman Vellani, I think she did an amazing job. I think she did a great job when it comes to Captain Marvel. Not Captain Marvel, Miss Marvel. I think she just did great. I honestly like her depiction, and it's like I said, it's 1-to-1, right? When it comes to Kamala Khan in the comics in comparison to her MCU, iteration, like, oh yeah, this is Kamala Khan through and through. So if you don't like Kamala Khan now, you're not gonna like Kamala Khan in the comics. Like, don't think like, oh, they changed it up or they switched her up. No. This is her through and through. A superhero nerd. She's in love with all the heroes in her world and all that type of stuff. Like, that's all she can think about. She's stuck in fantasy land. With that, she's fantasizing all day about being a part of the Avengers and standing among them and having her own powers herself and saving the world with the Avengers. That's all she can really think about. And Captain Marvel is her favorite hero. That's not some MCU propaganda. No. That's Kamala Khan. Okay, she loves Captain Marvel a lot, and that's deeply tied into her origin as well. So like as far as the character, like Kamala Khan, yeah, through and through, 1-to-1. Yeah, there you go. That's her. So they did a really good job there. Like I think the depiction of Kamala Khan is amazing. And then the next thing that I really think they nailed in this episode was essentially the family dynamic. Because a lot of Kamala Khan, if you're not familiar, in the comic books, Kamala Khan is kind of two parts, right? It's like one part superhero, and the other part is like her interpersonal relationships with the people around her. So we're talking her family and her friends, so like Bruno and Nakia, and things like, and then her brother and her parents. Like, that's a lot of Kamala Khan's her comic books and things like that. So I think the dynamic that she has with her family was also depicted very well in this show. Like this first episode, like we're really seeing like I said, 1-to-1 when it comes to Kamala Khan and the people around her. Like this looks very much like if you're talking about comic book accuracy, there it is. It's there. They nailed it when it comes to that. But relationship between her parents, and if you don't know, Kamala Khan is a Pakistani American, so that dynamic that they're dealing with, that they have, where her parents are a lot more traditional than she is, so they're kind of butting heads, because it's like she's more modern and her parents are more traditional. Like, there's even a moment in the show where she's out shopping with her mom, and there's a conversation that her mom's having with one of the other, I guess, Pakistani moms or whatever, the community there, and they have a conversation, and the other mom is like kind of talking about I think her daughter, and how she went ahead and went off and backpacking in some country or whatever, and kind of called off her wedding or whatever. And Kamala's like, oh, that's great, she went ahead and did what she wanted to do. And then her mom and her friend are kind of like, no, that's terrible. She's missing a ring on her finger. You know what I mean? So that was like a really cool thing that I really liked. That dynamic between them, as far as like Kamala being more modern and her parents being more traditional, and them kind of butting heads there. That was really nice to see. So they nailed that as well. And then talking about like her friends, right? So you got Bruno. Bruno's like her best friend. Bruno's really cool. He's kind of like nerdy, just like Kamala, and he has a big part in the first episode, and he's probably gonna have a big part in the rest of the show as well, when it comes to the plot. But their dynamic is also really cool. They're just best friends and things like that. He really supports Kamala, and vice versa. It's really cool there. And then we also see Nakia, her other friend. We don't really get much of her. We only get like a few shots of Nakia, and then we never see her again, to be completely honest. But she also, as far as like how she looks in the comics and how she looks in the show, 1-to-1. We don't know too much, how close the personalities are yet, because we haven't really seen her much. But she also seems very supportive of her friend as well. So I thought that was really cool. Again, this is 1-to-1 so far. And other than that, like, I feel like we kind of got to touch on our powers now, right? But as far as like our character, like the character itself, the people around her, like the family dynamic, all that stuff is 1-to-1. And as far as our powers, right? So in the show, right, and this is when we kind of get into the spoiler territory. I've kind of kept it more general, but we talk about our powers, right? I know that a big thing about Miss Marvel when it comes to some hardcore MCU fans that read comics and all that stuff as well was how comic book accurate her powers were going to be. And like from the first glimpse that we saw of them, we knew that they weren't going to be accurate at all. Like they're totally not totally different, but they're definitely like the origin of her powers are a lot different. Like Miss Marvel in the comics, her powers come from Terrigen Mist, and that relates to the Inhumans. In the show, like no, she essentially has a bangle that it seems to be was her grandmother's, and I think honestly, thinking on it, I actually like how they did it, and more so, less the bangle, but more so the depiction of her powers and how they handled it, and I'll kind of get into that. But as far as the bangle itself, like, does it have any like comic book importance? Well, it could be a negaband. I mentioned this in the last video. I think I might have mentioned it, or it could have been another take. But it could be a negaband. It could be quantum bands. It could be anything like that. But it also just be, something related to the 10 rings. We kind of, it kind of, has some type of relation to that, maybe aesthetic wise. It could also have something to do with maybe some relation to the Eternals and their technology. We won't really know until we get further into the show, and I think that will definitely be explained. But as far as her like the origin of her powers go, like, it sucks that it's not, maybe not sucks. It's kind of half and half if you really care about comic book accuracy. Like at first I did, and then as I watched the show I was like, oh, okay, I'm okay with it now. It just took me seeing a real application of it, as small of an application we got in the show in the first episode so far. But for me, that's all I needed, and I was like, okay, cool. But it's kind of tough because Inhumans aren't really that that big right now in the MCU, besides Black Bolt being in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, which I do think that we could have gotten Terrigen Mist and we would have been fine. And of course, like the relation, I guess similarities between Reed Richards and Kamala Khan might have confused some people, for people who aren't MCU fans, hardcore MCU fans. But even then, like I said, I think we're ready for Terrigen Mist, and they could have went that route as well. But as far as our powers go, like I think that they did a good job on trying to keep the essence of Kamala Khan in the comics still there, because when we see, like, I'll mention like the big moment that we see like her powers being used when she first activates them for the first time. She gets a hold of the bangle, right? And she's at the Captain Marvel cosplay contest at AvengerCon. We'll kind of get into that in a little bit. But she puts it on, and it starts kind of sinking to her body, whatever, and then she kind of thrusts her hands out, and like these crystals, if you've seen trailers and things like that, you see like the crystal things kind of materializing around her, and she's kind of messing around and kind of destroys a couple things. But the one thing that caught me that I was like, okay, I'm okay with this, is when one of her classmates gets hit by this huge Thor hammer, this model Thor hammer, at Avengers Con, and she essentially gets hit with it and starts swinging around, and she falls, and Kamala like reaches out and her arm stretches with like the crystal power and catches the girl and breaks her fall. And that's when I was like, okay, that's fine, as long as the essence of Kamala Khan and her power stays there. I was okay with it. I was cool from that point on. I was like, okay, Kevin Feige's not that insane, and he still made sure that the essence was there as far as her character. So after that, I was fine. But yeah, the powers, honestly, they look good. They look better than I thought they were gonna, turn out after, at least initially. Of course, from that last trailer when I did the last Miss Marvel video on the channel, when we saw that shot in the trailer, I was like, oh, okay, there it is. That's what we want. But it seems like we're gonna see a lot more of that than we thought we would, and I think that's really dope. But continuing on, the general plot of this episode, right? I've kind of talked about all the big things. Oh, okay, before we get into the plot, I'm sorry, one more thing before we get into the plot. There was one more thing that I peeped that this first episode explains, again, spoiler territory, was the question of how the world knew about Ant-Man. I mean, not Ant-Man, the end game, the events of Endgame. I'm sorry, I mentioned Ant-Man because that's important. But how the world, like, how much did the world know about Endgame essentially? In Ant-Man, apparently Scott Lang has a podcast that we kind of see in the first like 10 minutes of the episode get mentioned, where essentially he's on this podcast and he's just like blabbering his mouth about all the things that happened in the events of Endgame. So that was one question that gets answered in this, that if you needed like a connection to the wide scale of what's happening in the world in relation to Miss Marvel, that was one thing that was really interesting. And she, of course, listened to the podcast where apparently, again, Ant-Man, Scott Lang, it has a podcast where he's basically talking about what happened at the end in the Endgame, story. Like, what happened at the end? How did they beat Thanos? This and that. And this kind of gets into Captain Marvel as well, of why Kamala Khan idolizes, Captain Marvel so much. Because, okay, this might be a little childish, right? But when we were young, like, we were kind of childish anyway. But she idolizes Captain Marvel so much, in a way that a child would pick, like maybe pick their favorite superhero or whatever, and say they can do no wrong. They can do no wrong. They're the strongest. That's the end all to be all. And that really does have a close relation to the comics. So that's not something they just threw in. But I thought that was really interesting, right? That whole thing of, she basically listened to what Scott Lang told the world of how, they beat Thanos, and she took the one moment where Captain Marvel punches Thanos, and then she like destroys, all these ships, all the Thanos' army and the ships and all that stuff, and she took that one moment and she was like, oh yeah, Captain Marvel's the best. Which I thought was hilarious. But I just wanted to mention that because I thought that was pretty interesting of how the world knew about what happened there. I didn't know, we really didn't know if like they did a press conference or whatever and they were like, oh, Iron Man saved the world, or if it was like, Black Widow, if she was like the big hero. Like, we didn't really get a real good idea of how they found out and all that stuff. We knew in like Far From Home, like from like the Iron Man mural, that people knew that Iron Man, saved the world essentially. But we didn't know the exact extent of that. So seeing that in the podcast was also pretty dope. But continuing on, right? Talking about the general plot of the episode. This first episode was essentially, the main scope, besides us getting an introduction to Kamala and her character and the people around her, was she wanted to go to Avengers Con, right? But her parents essentially didn't want her to go. And it's not because they didn't trust her. Well, they did say they didn't trust her. But it's not because they didn't, trust entirely the event or anything like that. It was more so they didn't trust the other people around. And then it's that clash again between the more traditional side of things, of being, a Pakistani, and the modern thing that Kamala has to kind of fight with her parents with, of being like, hey, like, the world is different now. This is not the craziest thing ever. This is just a convention where we are gonna, talk about superheroes and take pictures and kind of, I just want to dress up as Captain Marvel and win a contest. Like, that's it. And they're just kind of having that clash, you know what I mean? But that's basically the main plot. She eventually realized, or sorry, my phone just, but she basically has to deal with that, right? Of, her parents, not letting her go. So she, hashes this plan with Bruno, her friend, of how they're going to sneak out and go to Avengers Con. So they go ahead and do this thing, and there's this really, hilarious shot where they're planning and all that stuff, and she's writing everything down. And this plan is not going to go exactly as planned. This. They're, teenagers. They're stupid. They're not going to, this isn't going to work entirely how they planned. But essentially, they hash out this plan where she sneaks out, they go to Avengers Con, they go so she can try to win the Captain Marvel contest, all that good stuff. So she goes, and then that's when we, kind of get a glimpse in, going back to my mention about her powers and stuff, where essentially that's when we see her powers activate. That's the big climax of the episode, where her powers activate and all that stuff at the convention. We get that shot of her, kind of, her powers activating, her knocking down a giant Ant-Man statue, like the head off the Ant-Man statue, and her saving her classmate, all that type of stuff. And that's essentially the scope of the episode. Her sneaking out, going to Avengers Con, that happening, unlocking her powers, and then at the end of the episode, she gets back home. Her mom's disappointed in her, so disappointed in her, and she kind of has this talk and conversation with her, and she says, do you want to be good like we raised you to be, or do you want to be, this cosmic head in the clouds person or whatever? And I thought that was that was a terrible mom speech, because if my mom, if I had powers, let's say I got powers one day and woke up and my mom said, do you want to be this great, amazing, good person that I raised you to be, or do you want to be cosmic? Like, yo, I'm picking cosmic. Cosmic sounds amazing. Am I wrong? Like, yo, on top of that, cosmic is used a lot. Is that the new lingo? Are we like, yo, that's cosmic? Yo, man, yo, not crazy. That's cosmic, yo. Like, is cosmic gonna be the new lingo? Like, let me know. Let me know in the comments if you guys are gonna use cosmic now, because I feel like I want to use cosmic now. But at the end of the episode, like, that's the conversation they have, and then she kind of lays down in her bed and she looks at her hand, kind of playing with her new powers, and she's like, I want to be cosmic. And like most of us would want to be cosmic. You know, I don't know about you, but you know, I'd want to be cosmic. But yeah, man, that was the episode. And all in all, like, I enjoyed it. I really did enjoy it, man. I really don't have anything like that. I felt was wrong with the episode. A lot of the problems that people are going to have for the episode are going to be outside of the show. That's just the reality of the social politics of the situation, how they feel about the MCU right now. That's really going to be the main thing that most people are going to have issues with. But as far as the show, man, I enjoyed it. Maybe it's because I'm closer to the demographic. I don't know, but I have friends that hated it. You know, I have friends that liked it. I'm on the camp that I liked it because I understood what it was trying to do. So for me, that's good enough for me. But with that being said, man, let me know what you guys thought about the episode in the comments and all that good stuff. What you guys think? Are we using cosmic? Is that the new lingo? Are we using cosmic? Let me know, guys, in the comments. But if you enjoy the content, as always, you already know what to do, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace. I got 100 bands all on my bank, still at the bottom, not reaching my range.